let's go to Ramallah and speak to Mona Shtaya, who's a digital communications analyst. She's also a fellow at the Tahrir Institute for Middle East Policy. Mona, thank you so much indeed for your time. International monitors have been confirming the news that we are giving. What do you know right now about communications?
So we've heard about the telecommunications are back to Gaza, but like as you know, since last night, basically at 2 a.m. Palestine time, they cut off the internet. So Gaza went again to the blackout. And basically, whenever we have such cases, we know that there's a lot happening on the ground. And the internet cut off is depriving Palestinians of sharing and reporting, as well as communicating with each other and reporting on what's happening on the ground. And this is basically a tactic that has been weaponized because of the internet Israeli control over the Palestinian infrastructure since Oslo Accords. It doesn't only happen in Gaza Strip. We should also mention that it's happening in the West Bank. Last night, they also invaded Jenin camp, and first thing they've done there is to cut off all the communications, so people won't be able to communicate, and this is basically puts people's lives at risk because people cannot like call the ambulance, and they cannot basically communicate or report on the human rights violations on the ground.
Yeah, we know that dictators around the world enjoy cutting the internet off to suppress their opposition. Would the internet and communications be considered a basic human right?
Yeah, of course. The right to connectivity is a fundamental human right, and people around the world, they should be able to communicate. Palestinians are lagging behind the world with the internet connectivity because still now, Palestine, and without those escalations on the ground, Palestinians in the West Bank are still having 3G communication, or the generation of the internet, and Palestinians in Gaza Strip are still using the second generation of the internet because the Israelis are denying Palestinians of the right to access safe and high quality and affordable internet. So we're lagging behind the world. Our work, our education, our everything is basically affected by those discriminatory policies against Palestinians. And as you can see, as soon as we have escalations on the grounds and war crimes on the ground, the first thing that they have done is cutting off internet, so people won't be able to report to the whole world, keeping in mind the unfair coverage of what's happening in Gaza Strip and the other kind of restrictions and the other challenges that Palestinians in Gaza are facing, such as the lack of fuel, electricity, among other things. So people are basically living under a really tough situation, and this is basically affecting their life.
You can absolutely imagine that people might even die because they don't have the ability to communicate about what their needs are, or maybe to get some emergency medical assistance for someone who has got a life-threatening injury. Would you say in your mind that it's a concerted Israeli policy because of its war on Gaza, that it's deliberately stopping the Palestinians trying to protect themselves almost, let alone how the Palestinians may use communications to attack Israel and anybody who might be invading Gaza, but just simply for civilians who are trying to keep themselves alive are suffering because of a concerted Israeli policy?
Well, of course, this is part of the war on information. Since those escalations started, media outlets, and journalists have been targeted because they are sharing facts on what's happening on the ground. They are reporting about the war crimes that are happening on the ground. People are also struggling with the social media biased content moderation policies, where Palestinian documentation of human rights violations have been taken down, have been censored. There is also shadow banning, where our reachability and the viewership on social media platforms are also restricted and limited. And sometimes there is a drop in the viewership on social media platforms. And that's also part of the same strategy to censor the Palestinian narrative and to control the information that comes out of Gaza Strip, as well as this is basically affecting people's right to access information, because people cannot even access information about what's happening in Gaza Strip, and it's as a result of the whole strategy of restricting and putting and increasing censorship on those narratives. Even journalists and media outlets' right to work and to live is affected because they can't report on what's happening on Gaza Strip. So their even right to work is not fully recognized by those restrictions.
Mona, thank you. As I said, thank you really very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Mona.